Chapter 3, Mr. Badger was actually my favorite character. And he's my favorite character in the movie, so I'm excited to see what he's written too. The mole had long waited to meet the badger. He seemed by all accounts to be such an important person and, though rarely seen, to have an influence on everybody about the place. But whenever the mole mentioned his wish to the water rat, he always found himself put off. "It's all right," the rat would say. "Badger'll turn up some day or other. He's always turning up, and then I'll introduce you. The best of fellows. But you must not only take him as you find him, but when you find him." "Couldn't you ask him here? Dinner or something?" said the mole. "He wouldn't come," replied the rat simply. "Badger hates society and invitations and all that sort of thing." "Well then, supposing we go and call on him?" suggested the mole. "Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't like that at all," said the rat, quite alarmed. "He's so very shy. He'd be sure to be offended. Besides, we can't. It's quite out of the question because he lives in the very middle of the wildwood." "Well, supposing he does," said the mole. "You told me the wildwood was all right, you know." "Oh, I know, so it is," replied the rat. "But I think we won't go there just now. Not just yet." The mole had to be content with this, but the badger never came along, and it was not till summer was long over, and cold and frost kept them much indoors, and the swollen river raced past outside their windows with a speed that made boating impossible, that he found his thoughts dwelling again upon the great badger. In the winter time the rat slept a great deal, retiring early and rising late. The mole had a good deal of spare time on his hands, and so one afternoon when the rat, in his armchair before the blaze, was alternately dozing and trying other rhymes that wouldn't fit, he decided to go out by himself and explore the wildwood, and perhaps strike up an acquaintance with Mr. Badger. It was a cold, still afternoon, with a hard, steely sky overhead when he slipped out of the warm parlor into the open air. The country lay bare and entirely leafless around him as he pushed on towards the wildwood, which lay before him low and threatening, like a black reef in some still southern sea. There was nothing to alarm him at first. Twigs crackled under his feet, logs tripped him, funguses on stumps looked like faces, and startled him for the moment, but that was all fun and exciting. It led him on, and he went deeper on to where the light was less, and trees crouched nearer and nearer, and holes made ugly mouths at him on either side. Everything was still, very still now. The dusk advanced on him steadily, rapidly, gathering in behind and in front, and the light seemed to be draining away like floodwater. Then the faces began. It was over his shoulder that he first thought he saw a face, a little evil, wedge-shaped face looking out at him from a hole. When he turned and confronted it, the thing had vanished. He quickened his pace, telling himself cheerfully not to begin imagining things, or there would be simply no end to it. If he could only get away from the holes in the banks, he thought, there would be no more faces. He swung off the path and plunged into the untrodden places of the wood. Then the pattering began. He thought it was only falling leaves at first, so slight and delicate was the sound of it. Then as it grew, it took a regular rhythm, and he knew it for nothing else but the pat, pat, pat of little feet, still a very long way off. Was it in front or behind? It seemed to be first one, then the other, then both. It grew and it multiplied, till from every quarter, as he listened anxiously, leaning this way and that, it seemed to be closing in on him. The pattering increased till it sounded like a sudden hail on the dry leaf carpet spread around him. The whole wood seemed running now, running hard, hunting, chasing, closing in round something or somebody. In panic, he began to run too, aimlessly, he knew not where. He ran up against things, he fell over things and into things, he darted under things and dodged round things. At last he took refuge in the dark, deep hollow of an old beech tree, which offered shelter, a hiding place, perhaps even safety, but who could tell? Speaking of nature running. Meantime the rat, warm and comfortable, dozed by his fireside. His paper of half-finished verses slipped From his knee, his head fell back, his mouth opened, and he wandered by the grassy banks of dream rivers. Then a coal slipped, the fire crackled and sent up a spurt of flame, and he woke with a start. He listened for a time. The house seemed very quiet. Then he called Molly several times. Receiving no answer, got up and went out into the hall. The mole's cap was missing from its accustomed peg. His galoshes, which always lay by the umbrella stand, were also gone. I'm gonna pause for a drink of water. The rat left the house and carefully examined the muddy surface of the ground outside, hoping to find the mole's tracks. There they were, sure enough. The galoshes were new, just bought for the winter, and the pimples on their soles were fresh and sharp. I've never heard of them referred to as pimples. That makes sense though. He could see the imprints of them in the mud, running along straight and purposeful, leading direct to the wildwood. The rat looked very grave and stood in deep thought for a minute or two. Then he re-entered the house, strapped a belt round his waist, shoved a pair of pistols into it, took up a stout cudgel that stood in a corner of the hall, and set off for the wildwood at a smart pace. Illustration of the wildwood. I'm guessing the entrance is it's not as narrow to get there. Or actually, that's where Mole was hiding. I couldn't see him quite at first. It was already getting towards dusk when he reached the first fringe of trees and plunged without hesitation into the wood, looking anxiously on either side for any sign of his friend. He made his way manfully through the length of the wood to its furthest edge, calling out cheerfully, "Molly, Molly, where are you? It's me, old rat." He had patiently hunted through the wood for an hour or more, when at last, to his joy, he heard a little answering cry. Guiding himself by the sound, he made his way through the gathering darkness to the foot of an old beech tree with a hole in it, and from out of the hole came a feeble voice saying, "Ratty, is that really you?" The rat crept into the hollow, and there he found the mole, exhausted and still trembling. "Oh, rat," he cried, "I've been so frightened, you can't think." "Oh, I quite understand," said the rat soothingly. "You shouldn't really have gone and done it, Mole. I did my best to keep you from it. We river bankers, we hardly ever come here by ourselves. If we have to come, we come in couples at least. Then we're generally all right. Now then," the rat continued presently, "I'll just take a look outside and see if everything's quiet, and then we really must be off." He went to the entrance of their retreat and put his head out. Then the mole heard him saying quietly to himself, "Hello, hello. Here is a go." "What's up, Ratty?" asked the mole. "Snow is up," replied the rat. Replied the rat briefly. "Or rather down. It's snowing hard." The mole came and crouched beside him, and looking out, saw the wood that had been so dreadful to him in quite a changed aspect. Holes, hollows, pools, pitfalls, and other black menaces to the wayfarer were vanishing fast, and a gleaming carpet of snow was springing up everywhere that looked too delicate to be trodden upon by rough feet. Fine powder filled the air and caressed the cheek with a tingle in its touch, and the black boles of the trees showed up in a light that seemed to come from below. I'm showing it really well. There's the little kind of cave they were in. Well, it can't be helped," said the rat after pondering. "We must make a start, and take our chances, I suppose. The worst off it is, I don't exactly know where we are, and now the snow makes everything look so very different." It did indeed. The mole would not have known that it was the same wood. However, yet they set out bravely and took the line that seemed most promising, holding on to each other and pretending that they recognized an old friend in every fresh tree that grimly and silently greeted them, or saw openings, gaps, or paths with a familiar turn in them in the endless scene of white space and black tree trunks that refused to vary. An hour or two later, they had lost all account of time. They pulled up, downhearted, weary, and hopelessly at sea, and sat down on a fallen tree trunk to recover their breath and consider what was to be done. "We can't sit here very long," said the rat. "We shall have to make another push for it." So once more they got on their feet and struggled down into the dell, where they hunted about for a cave or some corner that was dry and a protection from the bitter wind and the whirling snow. They were investigating some of the hummocky bits with the rat had spoken of, when suddenly the mole tripped up and fell forward on his face with a squeal. "Oh, my leg," he cried. "Oh, my poor shin," and he sat up on the snow and nursed his leg in both his front paws. "Poor old mole," said the rat kindly. "You don't seem to be having much luck today, do you? Let's have a look at that leg. Yes," he went on, going down on his knees to look. "You've cut your shin, sure enough. Wait till I get at my handkerchief and I'll tie it up for you." "I must have tripped over a hidden branch or a stump," said the mole miserably. "Oh my, oh my." "It's a very clean cut," said the rat, examining it again attentively. "That was never done by a branch or stump. Looks as if it was made by a sharp edge of something in metal. Funny." He pondered a while and examined the humps and slopes that surrounded them. "Well, never mind what done it," said the mole, forgetting his grammar in his pain. "It hurts just the same, whatever done it." But the rat, after carefully tying up the leg with his handkerchief, had left him and was busy scraping in the snow. He scratched and shoveled and explored, all four legs working busily, while the mole waited impatiently, remarking at intervals, "Oh, come on, rat." Suddenly the rat cried, "Hooray!" and then, "Hooray, hooray, 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 hooray," and danced a feeble jig in the snow. "What have you found, Ratty?" asked the mole, still nursing his leg. "Come and see," said the delighted rat as he jigged on. The mole hobbled up to the spot and had a good look. "Well," he said at last, slowly, "I see it right enough. Seen the same sort of thing before, lots of times. Familiar object, I call it. A door scraper." "Well, what of it? Why dance jigs around a door scraper?" That's them in the snow with the door scraper. And some more things there that I find. The rat didn't reply. He just attacked a snowbank beside them with great energy, probing with his cudgel? I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Everywhere, and then digging with fury, and the mole scraped busily too, more to oblige the rat than for any other reason, for his opinion was that his friend was getting lightheaded. Oh, in the movie they argue about it for a little bit, and it's very silly, and it's fine, but it's a cute moment. But that's sweet that the mole decided to help his friend instead. Some 10 minutes hard work, and the point of the rat's cudgel struck something that sounded hollow. He worked till he could get a paw through and feel, then called the mole to come and help him. Hard at it went the two animals, till at last the result of their labors stood in full view of the astonished mole. In the side of what had seemed to be a snowbank stood a solid-looking little door, painted a dark green. An iron bell pull hung by the side, and below it, on a small brass plate, neatly engraved in square capital letters, they could read by the aid of moonlight, "Mr. Badger." The mole fell backwards on the snow from the sheer surprise and delight. "Rat," cried, "you're a wonder, a real wonder, that's what you are. I see it all now. You're so clever, Ratty." "I suppose you're going to sit on the snow all night and talk," said the rat crossly. "Get up at once and hang on to that bell pull you see there, and ring hard, as hard as you can while I hammer." While the rat attacked the door with his stick, the mole sprang up at the bell pull, clutched it, and swung there, both feet well off the ground. They're so little. From a long way off, they could faintly hear a deep-toned bell. They waited patiently for what seemed a very long time, stamping in the snow to keep their feet warm. At last they heard the sound of slow, shuffling footsteps approaching the door from the inside. There was the noise of a bolt shot back, and the door opened a few inches, enough to show a long snout and a pair of sleepy, blinking eyes. Here's what Badger looks like. Hopefully you can see them. He's super cute, and they're very little next to him. Now the very next time this happens," said a gruff voice, "I shall be exceedingly angry. Who is it this time, disturbing people on such a night? Speak up." "Oh, Badger," cried the Rat, "let us in, please. It's me, Rat, and my friend Mole, and we've lost our way in the snow." "What, Ratty, my dear little man," exclaimed the Badger in quite a different voice. "Come along in, both of you at once. Why, you must be frozen. Why, never. Lost in the snow, and in the wild wood, too, at this time of night. But come in." The two animals tumbled over each other in their eagerness to get inside, and with great joy and relief heard the door shut behind them. The Badger shuffled on in front of them, carrying a candle, and they followed him, nudging each other in an excited sort of way, down a long, gloomy, and to tell the truth, decidedly shabby passage, into a sort of central hall, out of which they could dimly see other long tunnel-like passages, but there were doors in the hall as well, stout oak doors. One of these the Badger flung open, and at once they found themselves in all the glow and warmth of a large firelit kitchen. So being very cozy. The kindly Badger sat them down on seats to toast themselves at the fire, and made them remove their wet clothes and coats and boots. Then he fetched them dressing gowns and slippers, and bathed them with warm water, and mended the cut with stitching plaster, till the whole thing was just as good as new, if not better. In the embracing light and warmth, warm and dry at last, with weary legs propped up in front of them, and the cheering clink of plates being arranged on the table behind, it seemed to the storm-driven animals that the cold and trackless wildwood just left outside was miles and miles away, and all that they had suffered in it a half-forgotten dream. When at last they were thoroughly toasted, the Badger summoned them to the table, where he had been busy laying a meal. They had felt pretty hungry before, but when they actually saw, at last, the supper that was spread for them, really it seemed only a question of what they should attack first, where all was so attractive, and whether the other things would obligingly wait for them till they had time to give them attention. When supper was really finished at last, and after they had chatted for a time about things in general, the Badger said heartily, "Now then, tell us the news from your part of the world. How's old Toad going on?" "Oh, from bad to worse," said the Rat, while the Mole, basking in the firelight, his heels higher than his head, tried to look properly mournful. "Another smash-up only last week, and a bad one. You see, he will insist on driving himself, and he's hopelessly incapable. If he'd only employ a decent, steady, well-trained animal, pay him good wages, and leave everything to him, he'd get on all right. But no, he thinks he's a heaven-born driver, and nobody can teach him anything, and all the rest follows." "How many has he had?" asked the Badger gloomily. "Smashes or machines?" asked the Rat. "Oh, well, after all, it's the same thing with Toad. This is the 7th. As for the others, you know, that coach house of his, well, it's piled up to the roof, with bits of motor cars, none of them bigger than your hat. That accounts for the other 6, so far as they can be accounted for. He's been in hospital 3 times, put in the Mole, and as for the fines he's had to pay, it's simply awful to think of." "Yes, and that's part of the trouble," continued the Rat. "Toad's rich, we all know, but he's not a millionaire, and he's a hopelessly bad driver, and quite regardless of law and order. Killed or ruined, it's got to be one of the 2 things, sooner or later. Badger, we're his friends. Oughtn't we to do something? The Badger went through a bit of a hard thinking. "Now look here," he said at last, rather severely. "Of course you know I can't do anything now." His 2 friends agreed, quite understanding his point. No animal is ever expected to do anything strenuous or heroic or even moderately active during the off-season of winter. "Very well then," continued the Badger. "But when once the year has really turned, and the nights are shorter, and halfway through them one rouses and feels fidgety and wanting to be up and doing by sunrise, if not before, you know." Both animals nodded gravely. They knew. "Well then, went on the badger. We, that is, you and me and our friend the mole here, will take Toad in hand. We'll stand no nonsense whatever. We'll bring him back to reason, by force if need be. We'll make him be a sensible Toad. You're asleep, Rat. Not me, said the Rat, waking with a jump. Well, it's time we were all in bed, said the badger, getting up and fetching flat candlesticks. Come along, you two, and I'll show you your quarters. And take your time tomorrow morning. Breakfast at any hour you please. During lunch the next day, the badger and the mole became very friendly, after the mole had expressed his preference for underground homes. As soon as lunch was over, the badger offered to show the mole around his house. The badger lighted a lantern and told the mole to follow him. Crossing the hall, they passed down one of the principal tunnels, and the wavering light of the lantern gave glimpses on either side of rooms both large and small, some mere cupboards, others nearly as broad and imposing as Toad's dining hall. A narrow passage at right angles led them into another corridor, and here the same thing was repeated. The mole was staggered at the size and extent of it all, at the length of the dim passages, the solid ceilings of the crammed storage chambers, the stonework everywhere, the pillars, the arches, the pavements. How on earth, Badger, said the mole at last, did you ever find time and strength to do all this? It's astonishing. It would be astonishing indeed, said the badger simply, if I had done it. But as a matter of fact, I did none of it, only cleaned out the passages and rooms as far as I had need of them. There's lots more of it, all round about. I see you don't understand, and I must explain it to you. There's badger and mole hanging out. Well, very long ago, on the spot where the wild wood now stands, before ever it had planted itself and grown up to what it now is, there was a city of people, you know. But what has become of them all? Asked the mole. Who can tell, said the badger. People come, they stay for a while, they build, and they go. It is their way. But we remain. There were badgers here. I've been told long before that same city ever came to be, and now there are badgers here again. When they got back to the kitchen again, they found the rat walking up and down, very restless. The underground atmosphere was getting on his nerves, and he seemed really to be afraid that the river would run away if he wasn't there to look after it. There's Badger and Mole again walking down the corridors. Very beautiful. So Rat had his overcoat on and his pistols thrust into his belt again. Come along, Mole, he said as soon as he caught sight of them. We must get off while it's daylight. Don't want to spend another night in the wildwood again. You really needn't fret, Ratty, added the badger placidly. My passages run further than you think, and I've bolt holes to the edge of the wood in several directions, though I don't care for everybody to know them. When you really have to go, you shall leave by one of my shortcuts. Meantime, make yourself easy and sit down again. The rat was nevertheless still eager to be off and attend to his river, so the badger, taking up his lantern again, led the way along a damp and airless tunnel that wound and dipped for a weary distance that seemed to be miles. At last, daylight began to show itself through tangled growth overhanging the mouth of the passage, and the badger, bidding them a hasty goodbye, pushed them through the opening, made everything look as natural as possible again, with creepers, brushwood, and dead leaves, and retreated. It's really smart. They found themselves standing on the very edge of the wildwood, rocks and brambles and tree roots behind them, in front of... Oh, there goes a rat, actually. They found themselves standing on the very edge of the wildwood, rocks and brambles and tree roots behind them, in front a great space of quiet fields, hemmed by lines of hedges black on the snow, and far ahead a glint of the familiar old river, while the wintry sun hung red and low on the horizon. Looking back, they saw the whole mass of the wildwoods, dense, menacing, compact, grimly set in vast white surrounding. Together they turned and made swiftly for home, for firelight, and for the voice sounding cheerily outside their window of the river that they knew and trusted in all its moods. And that was chapter 3 with Badger. Next time, chapter 4 is more about Toad. So, yeah. Thank you for listening.